guys, today in intermediate algebra we're going to look at how to graph a line, and we're going to look at two different ways in graphing a line. We're going to graph using the intercepts, and we're going to graph using the slope and the y-intercept. So to be in this class, you're supposed to already know how to plot these ordered pairs, but sometimes people aren't always familiar with plotting ordered pairs, so let me remind you really quick. If you've forgotten or if you've never seen it, let me show you real quick how to do that. All right? So an ordered pair looks like this. It consists of an x-coordinate and a y-coordinate. And you can remember that the x comes first because it goes in alphabetical order, but you've got to plot it. All right? Now, the x-axis runs horizontally, and the y-axis runs vertically. Okay? And the point where they cross at 0, 0. Nowhere on the x, nowhere on the y. That's called the origin. Okay, so if you hear people say anything about the origin, they're just referring to the very middle where it crosses at 0, 0. Okay? All right, so now if we were going to plot some points, all right, get that going. All right, so let's say I wanted to plot negative 3, 2. All right, and we'll do that one in pink. So remember, the x-coordinate comes first. So this is telling me I go to where x is negative 3, all right, which is kind of right here on that line. All right, but then I got to go to where the y is 2. So I go out negative 3 on the x, it's going to be 3 to the left, and then we're going up 2. And so right here is the location, negative 3, 2. Okay? All right, so if I wanted to plot, we'll do this one in blue, let's say 0, negative 5. Okay. So again, you're always worried about the x-coordinate first, and so it says don't move anywhere on the x. Stay right there at 0, but then you've got to move down 5 on the y, so that would be right here, 0, negative 5. Okay? All right, and let's do one more. All right, so if I wanted to plot, let's say 8, 6. All right? So again, do the x-coordinate first. You're going to go out to where x is 8 right there, and then you've got to move up to where the y is 6, which is right here. So there's the location, 8, 6. Okay, but make sure you know how to plot an ordered pair, because we'll be doing that today, and then we'll be talking about intercepts. And so I kind of go over this in the lesson, but an intercept is just where your graph crosses the x or y axis. Okay? So if you have this picture, okay, this graph, and we're talking about intercepts. Intercepts, again, are where you cross the x or the y-axis. So x-intercepts are where you cross the x-axis. So I'd have 2 of them, all right? And y-intercepts, where you cross the y-axis. I would have 1 right there. So we go over it in the lesson about an intercept because we want to graph using these intercepts. And then we graph using the slope and the y-intercept. Okay. All right, so watch the lesson and let me know if you have any questions. Okay, so we're going to talk about slope and graphing lines today. Everybody should know how to plot an ordered pair, okay, but just remind yourself over here, jot it down. Remember, an ordered pair looks like this. The x-coordinate comes first, and then you got the y-coordinate, okay? So we're going to graph in 2 ways today, okay? Scratch out this and a checkpoint for me. I meant to delete that off your notes. We're just going to graph using the intercepts, okay? All right. So I gave you this definition of what an x-intercept is and what a y-intercept is, but really quick, let's look at a picture of what that looks like. All right, so you don't have to draw this, you don't have to write this, but everybody look. All right. You all know the x-axis runs this way and the y-axis runs vertically, okay? If let's say I give you this picture, all right, and we have this graph, okay? When you're talking about graphing using intercepts, all right, using the intercepts is real easy if you know what an intercept is, all right? An intercept is where your graph crosses the axis. So if we think about the x-axis, which runs this way, which runs horizontally, how many times does my pink line cross my graph? How many times does my pink graph cross my x-axis? Twice. So this means I have 2 x-intercepts. An intercept is where you cross the axis. All right, so if I said label these as ordered pairs, well, remember the x-coordinate goes first, so we went out to negative 2, and we didn't go anywhere on the y. And then this one would be what? 3, and nowhere on the y. So in both x-intercepts, what's the y-coordinate? 0, okay? And that's always going to happen. At any point across this x-axis, the y-coordinate is 0, all right? How many times does my pink graph cross my y-axis? Once. So I have one y-intercept. And remember, the x-coordinate goes first, so I didn't go anywhere on the x, but I went up 1 on the y. So if you notice, the x-coordinate along this whole line, wherever I would cross, is always 0. So every intercept has what number in it? 0. And that makes it really easy for us to graph using the intercepts, because we can zero out the x's and zero out the y's. So right there where it says graphing using the intercepts, above it, I want you to write, this is called the cover up method. And it's a super fast way to graph a line, okay? But unfortunately, it works best when your line comes a certain way. You need to be in standard form, and everything needs to divide out nice and pretty. Okay, so let's do one. I'll ask you to do this one time on your test. All right, so I gave you the steps. You're going to find the x-intercept and plot it. You're going to find the y-intercept and plot it. It just takes 2 points to make a straight line, and you'll connect them up. All right. Everybody take your hand, your finger, okay? This is called the cover-up method when you want to graph with intercepts. All right? So we'll do it in pink. All right. You want to find the x-intercept. You take your finger, your hand, you cover up y, okay? So I'm going to mark it out up here because I can. But if you want to find x, what you do is you zero out y, because that y-coordinate is a 0. So when you multiply something by 0, it disappears, right? So you just cover it up. Now, if you had to solve that, put your finger over the y. You've got 2x equals 8. What if, how do you solve that? What is x equal to? 4. So x is 4. Okay, so when you want to find x, I want you to write cover up y. All right. Now, when you want to find the y, you're going to cover up the x. You're going to zero out the x. So take your hand now and cover the x up. So if you had to solve that now for y, you got 4y equals 8. What is y equal to? 2. All right. Now, what you want to do is turn these into ordered pairs. What does every intercept have in it? What number? 0. So for the x, the y is 0, and for a y, the x is 0. So just fill in the x and the y with the zeros. Okay? All you have to do is plot those and connect up the dots. So we're going to plot 4, 0, plot the x-intercept at 4, right? And the y-intercept at 0, 2. Join them up. And there you go. Super, super easy to graph using those intercepts. Okay. All right, so I know this one is not on your sheet, okay? But let's do it, and I'm going to do it in yellow. Add one in. I want you to graph. And you can graph it right there on the same plot. All right, negative 3x plus 4y equals negative 12. Okay, so I want you to add that one in. Graph negative 3x plus 4y equals negative 12. Okay, so I want you to find the x, cover up the y, find the y, cover up the x, and get those 2 points. Okay, so if I want to find x, you cover up y. So what am I dividing then? What am I dividing negative 12 by? Negative 3. What's a negative 12 divided by negative 3? 4. So there's my x at 4 again. Okay. And if I want to find y, I cover up x. So if I covered it up, now I'm dividing negative 12 by what? 4. And what would that be? Negative 3. Now, so I'm going to have negative 3 plotted on the y. Turn them into ordered pairs for me. For the x, you put the 0 in for the y, and for the y, you put the 0 in for the x, and then you join them up. There you go. Okay. So I'll ask you one time on your test to graph for me using the intercepts, and so that's the cover-up method when you see graphing using the intercepts. Okay. Now, it's fantastic, and it's so easy to graph using the intercepts when your line looks a certain way. So it has to be in the right form. X and Y have to be on the same side. But we could rearrange it if it wasn't. We can do that part. But it also kind of needs to divide out nice and pretty. So you don't have to write this down, but let's say I gave you this one, and I said, all right, I want you to graph this one. All right, what's the problem if I said, all right, I want you to graph 5x minus 3y equals 17. What's the problem with graphing using intercepts? Yeah, is that going to be nice and pretty to graph? Oh, it doesn't divide out. So this is not the best way to graph the line, or this is not the way you're going to always use, because most of the time our lines don't divide out nice and pretty where we get these great numbers. So we have to have another method, okay? So when it doesn't divide out, which is most of the time, you want to use this other method. So we want to talk about graphing using the slope. So let's talk about what slope is for just a minute. All right, so the slope. The slope of a line is the measure of the steepness of the line. Whenever you see that M in algebra, it just stands for slope, okay? Slope is just a number. Slope can be 5. Slope can be negative 3/7. All it is just a number, but that number tells me so much about that line. It tells me, is it kind of steep or is it kind of flat? Does the line point to the left or point to the right? It tells me everything I need to know just from that one number, okay? I want you to underline this sentence. You need 2 ordered pairs to be able to find slope, okay? So anytime I ask you to find slope, you got to have 2 ordered pairs, and then fill in the formula. The formula is M equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So y sub 2 minus y sub 1 over x sub 2 minus x sub 1. I want you to write the word memorize. Right there by that formula. You have one formula that you need to memorize for me this semester, and that's it, okay? So make sure you have that memorized. And as long as you have it memorized, then finding the slope is super easy, okay? All right. So let's do example 2 together. All right, it says find the slope, and I gave you your 2 ordered pairs, -2, 0, and -8, -3. The best thing you can do is come across the top. Call the first pair the 1s. x1, y1, call the second pair the 2s, x2, y2. Now, it doesn't really matter which pair is the 1s and which pair is the 2s. If you want to be difficult, call this pair the 1s and then that pair the 2s. That's fine. But what you can't do is say x1, y2. They have to both be 1s and both be 2s. All right? And as long as you have your formula memorized, now I want you to write it. Because the more you write it, the more it sticks in your head. y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Write your formula every time. Okay? And as long as you have it memorized, it's a simple plug and chug. So help me out. What is y sub 2? -3. Minus, what is y sub 1? 0. All right, what's x sub 2? All right, minus, what is x sub 1? Be careful, good, because it's minus that -2. So that's a place that sometimes people will go wrong when they've got it's -8 minus that -2. Make sure you got those 2 negatives, and what do those 2 negatives turn into? A positive. So if you finished it on out, on the top you get a -3, and on the bottom, what's a -8 plus 2? -6. What happens with the 2 negatives? Becomes positive and reduce it. Good. All right, so super easy to do, but what if you don't memorize your formula? What's going to happen? You can't get it on a test. So make sure that you memorize it. This is also a formula that you'll need next semester in college algebra, so make sure that you have it memorized. All right, so you do example 3. Go across the top, label it. I want you to write your formula. Again, the more you write it, the more it sticks in your head. All right, so if we plugged it in, right, and you labeled them across the top, what is y sub 2? -13 minus, what's that, y sub 1? -1. All right, x sub 2, 2 minus x sub 1. All right, so does anybody have any questions on plugging it in and where the numbers go? Okay, so both of them have those double negatives, which are going to turn positive. All right, so on the top, what's a -13 plus 1? Negative 12. And on the bottom, what's 2 plus 6? 8. Always reduce it. Make sure you fix if they're both negative, but there's only one negative, so it stays negative, and reduce it by 4, so you get 3/2. Okay. So any questions on finding that slope? Again, have your formula memorized. You'll need it next semester too. All right, so we're going to graph using this slope. Okay? So when we graph, we use a slope and we use a y-intercept. All right, so you want to get your equation to look like this. All right, so when we did the intercepts a minute ago, we wanted the x and y on the same side so we could cover it up. We don't want that now. Now we want it to be y equals. We want that y by itself. Okay? So you're going to have a number in front of your x, and then you're going to have a b. The number in front of your x is your slope. The plane number, the constant, is going to be your y-intercept, and we're going to use those two values to graph this line. Okay? So I gave you steps. I want you to put a big star right here by step 1, okay, where it says solve for y. Make sure you do that. Okay? All right, so again, the number in front of your x is your slope, the constant is your y-intercept, and then we'll go through how to graph it. So I put the steps up here, or the notes up here. There's a different way to do this, but this is the way I do it. When you're looking at it, let me move that real quick. All right. If you've got a positive slope, you're going to go up and to the right. And if you've got a negative slope, you're going to go down and to the right. So just pay attention to the slope, whether it's positive or negative, but you're going to always go over to the right, the bottom number. But if it's positive, you're going to go up and right. If it's negative, you're going to go down and right. Okay, so let's do some examples. Okay, so look at this first one. Again, what you need to remember when you're going to graph using the slope is the first step, that y has to be by itself. Is the y by itself? Okay, you're going to have two numbers then. The number in front of x is your slope, okay? And then the number, the constant, is your y-intercept. Okay. All right, now we just did this a second ago when we did the cover-up method, an intercept, a y-intercept. What number does an intercept always have in it? 0. So if you have the y, then the x-coordinate was 0. Fix it, make it look right. Okay. All right, then I want you to write this for me so you can look at it later. This is where you start. You start with that y-intercept. This y-intercept, plot it, put it on the y-axis, 0, 1. Okay, that's where you start each time, is plot that y-intercept. Okay. Now, slope is like you using your stairs. Either you're going to go up the stairs or you're going to go down the stairs, but it's going to help you get your next point. Do I have a positive or a negative slope in here? Positive. So if it's positive, you're going to go up the top number and then to the right, the bottom number. You're always going to the right on the bottom number. Okay. So put your pencil back on your 1, okay? From here, you're going to go up 2 and then over 3 to the right. So you're going to jump up 2, then over 3 to the right, and make your next dot. Okay, so you start from your 1, and you go up 2, over 3. All it takes is 2 points to make that line. Join them up. Okay. If it's a positive slope, your line should lean toward the right. It should lean toward the positive x's. Okay, it should point that way. All right. Questions on that one? All right, so the next one, example 5. Remember, I want you to always ask yourself, first, is the y by itself? Am I good with this one? Is the y by itself? Yeah. All right, so what's my slope here? Negative 3 over 2, and my y-intercept? Negative 2. Okay. So always pick out your two numbers and then turn this the way it's supposed to look. Fill in the 0 for the x. All right, so again, that's where I start. I start with that y-intercept. So go plot it. Plot 0, negative 2. Okay. All right, now, you got to decide if you're going to go up and right or down and right. Is my slope in this one positive or negative? Negative. So when it's negative, you're going to go down the top number, and then you're going to go over to the right, the bottom. So again, you're always going to the right. If it's positive, up and right, negative, down and right. So go put your pencil back on that 0, negative 2. Okay. And then from this, you're going to go down 3 and over 2 to make your next dot. And then join them up. But you're always going to the right. You're just going to go up or down the top number depending on the sign. All right, so any questions on 4 or 5 or how to graph? Okay. All right, let's look at the next two. What's wrong with number 6? Y is not by itself, okay? So we got to make that happen. We got to get the y by itself. What's over there with the y? 4x. And I need to move it across the equal mark. What happens when I pick up that positive 4x and move it across the equal mark? Good. If it's positive on this side, when you move it across, it goes negative. It doesn't matter if you write y equals negative 4x plus 1 or if you write y equals 1 minus 4x. I just like my x closest to the equal mark, so that's how I do it. Okay? But again, when you pick it up, move it across the equal mark, the sign will change. Okay. So that one wasn't too bad to get that y by itself. Okay. So what's my slope in this one now? Number in front of x? Okay, what might make you a little nervous about that? It's not a fraction. So could you write it as a fraction if you wanted? How do you write that as a fraction? Good. So if it makes you feel better, you put it over 1. Okay. What's my y-intercept? Good. 1, and you fill in that 0. So does anybody have any questions on what we've done so far in this one? Pick up that 4x and move it across, make it negative, and then we're good. All right, so you start 0, 1. Okay. You going up or down on this one? Down. Since it's negative, so you're going to go down 4 and then to the right 1. And you put your pencil back on that y-intercept. So down 4. I get the question a lot of times is, do I count that middle spot, the origin? Absolutely. So you're going to start from here and go down 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So you should be at the negative 3. And then over 1. Join them up. If it's got a negative slope, it should lean toward the left. It should point toward those negative x's. Okay. All right. Questions? All right, let's do that last one. Put a big star by this one. You'll definitely have one of these. Okay? So we get ready, and clearly the y is not by itself. So I got to make that happen. All right. What was the first thing we did on number 6? Move the x across. So that's going to be the first thing we do here. So what happens to this positive 3x when you move it across? Negative. And it stays a plus 4. And so many times I'll have this happen where I'll have students do that for me, okay? And they've made a little bit of a mistake. It throws the whole problem off. What did I do wrong? I dropped that negative. Good. So make sure if it's negative, it's going to come down and stay negative. Don't drop that sign, okay? The 4 is negative. Thank you. Sorry, I copied it down wrong. Don't do that either. Okay. All right. Perfect. Thank you. Okay, so now, you want to get rid of that negative 2. How do you get rid of the negative 2 in front of the y? Divide everybody by it. So divide everybody by that negative 2. Okay. So that's going to cancel out. So we got y equals, all right, those two negatives cancel, and I can't reduce it anymore, but I've got 3 over 2x. And what's a negative 4 divided by negative 2? Positive 2. You'll for sure have one where you've got to move everything away from that y. Okay. But once you do that, then it's pretty simple from there on out. What is my slope in this one? 3 over 2. And what's my y-intercept? 2. And I'm going to write it how? Good. Okay. All right, so any questions on getting that y by itself? All right, so now start 0, 2. Do you go up or down on this one? Up. So a positive, so we're going to go up 3 over 2. And make your line. So let me write that in. We're going to go up since it's positive and then right. Any questions on graphing the lines? So I'll tell you on your test, you'll have one where I say use the intercepts, and that's the cover-up method, and then you'll have 2 or 3 where you have to get that y by itself and then graph from there. The last little thing in this section, and I want you to write this, is vertical and horizontal lines. I want you to write this, memorize. When you just have to graph and you just see an X or you just see a Y, those are your vertical and horizontal lines, okay? And you don't want to have them mixed up. It takes, when you see both the X and a Y, that's when the line's going to slant one way or the other. But if you just have an X or just a Y, it's straight vertical or horizontal, and you need to memorize which. And the reason why people miss them all the time is they go opposite of the direction of the axis, okay? Because, you know, the X-axis runs horizontally. But when you want to graph an X equal line, all right, make yourself this note, just an X is a vertical line. And people will miss this because they're thinking about the x-axis, which is running horizontally. But when you see just an x, that's a vertical line. So for like this one, I would go to where x is -3, which is right there. And I draw a vertical line through it. Okay, so just an x is a vertical line. You need to flat out just memorize that. Okay, vertical lines have no slope. Now, for me to do number 9, what would I need to do first? So get rid of that 3. What is y really equal to? 4. All right, so make yourself a note. Just a y is a horizontal line. So I would go to where y is 4, which is right here, and draw the horizontal line through it. Again, it goes opposite of the direction of the y-axis. So sometimes people memorize it like this. If it helps you, great. But if you took a y and I said turn it upside down, flip it over, what letter does it make? Rotate it in your mind. H. If you flip it upside down, you get an H. And so some people remember that the Y goes with the horizontal like that. If that helps you in any way, great. If not, just flat out memorize it. But horizontal lines have slope equals 0. But you want to know you'll have one of them on your test. Some tests will have X equals, some tests will have Y equals, so you don't know which one you're going to get. But memorize it. Don't miss 5 points because of that. But just an X is vertical, just a Y is horizontal.